twin daughters gone. A cruise meant to be an escape had turned into a nightmare. For Claire Whitlock, life had split cleanly into before and after. 10 months had crawled by since that night in the Caribbean, and Ashford, Virginia, had become a cage lined with photographs of children who never came home. But then, a storm off the Carolina coast spat something back that no one expected. A battered suitcase, its zipper rusted shut, its canvas peeling with salt and time. And what was found inside, it would drag every buried fear back into the light. Claire sat alone in the dim living room of her small Ashford bungalow, the same room that had once been filled with the shrieks and laughter of her twin girls, Lily and Millie. Now it looked more like a shrine and a war room combined. Missing person flyers littered the coffee table, some bent at the corners from being stuffed into strangers' hands. Others faded by the sunlight that filtered stubbornly through the blinds she never thought to adjust. On the far wall, a bulletin board sagged under the weight of pinned photographs, maps with colored strings, handwritten notes copied from police reports. Claire had memorized every detail. The time-stamped security footage from the cruise, the statements from other passengers, the grainy still of a man in a stolen uniform. She carried those details in her chest like lead, her breath forever caught between fury and despair. Beside her armchair sat a neat stack of unopened sympathy cards. Neighbors, co-workers, even distant relatives she barely knew. She hadn't opened a single one. She didn't need more words of sorrow. She needed her daughters back. The house was silent, but not peaceful. Silence here meant remembering. The hollow where Lily's stuffed rabbit used to sit, the chipped paint on Millie's bedroom door, from where she'd taped a drawing of mermaids a week before the trip. Claire dragged her hands through her hair, staring at the phone on the side table as though she could force it to ring. And then it did. She jolted upright, knocking a stack of reports to the floor. Her chest tightened when she saw the number. Not local, not family, Black Ridge Police Department. Her throat went dry. She answered anyway. "This is Claire, Mrs. Whitlock." The voice on the other end was gravel and steel. Detective Samuel Hale. He had been on her case from the beginning. Never gave her platitudes, never gave her false hope. Just facts, cold and brutal. He wasn't a man who called lightly. Claire's hand trembled around the receiver. "Detective." There was the briefest pause, like he was bracing himself for the impact of what he was about to say. "We need you to come to Black Ridge right away. Something's turned up." Her heart pounded so hard she thought it might split her ribs. "What is it?" Hale exhaled, the sound frayed at the edges. "A suitcase washed ashore near Daufuskie Island. We believe it belonged to the man we've been tracking, the one tied to your daughter's disappearance." Claire's blood ran cold. What was inside? Another pause, and when Hale spoke again, his voice dropped to something she had never heard from him before, a kind of heaviness that wrapped itself around every word. "You should come in person, Mrs. Whitlock. It's better that way." Claire's body went rigid. She wanted to demand answers, to scream through the phone until he told her everything. But deep down, she already knew. Whatever lay zipped inside that suitcase wasn't something a detective could deliver over phone. It was something that would crush her, remold her, change the investigation forever. The call ended. Claire sat frozen, the silence suddenly unbearable. Her gaze swept over the scattered papers, the grinning school photos of Lily and Millie pinned against corkboard. For 10 months she had lived in limbo, hoping for a miracle and fearing a grave. Now the scales had tipped. She rose slowly, moving on autopilot, grabbing her coat from the hook by the door. Her reflection in the window startled her. Sunken cheeks, tired eyes, a woman who looked older than her 39 years. She pressed her palm to the glass for a moment, steadying herself. Then she left the house, pulling the door shut behind her. The drive from Ashford to Black Ridge blurred into a smear of headlights and rain-slicked asphalt. The city always felt different from the quiet, suffocating routines of her hometown. Black Ridge was larger, louder, alive in a way Ashford wasn't. But tonight, it loomed like a graveyard. At the precinct, the fluorescent lights hummed against cracked tile floors. A young officer escorted her through the halls until she reached a conference room. Hale stood inside, his shoulders squared, his gray suit damp from the storm outside. On the table before him sat a manila folder and a small evidence bag containing a single, waterlogged object. Claire stepped closer. It was a child's hair ribbon, blue with tiny white stars. Millie's. Her breath hitched, and the room tilted violently. She clutched the edge of the table, her nails biting into the wood. "Tell me," she rasped. Hale's expression softened, not pity, but a kind of grim respect. The suitcase contained belongings consistent with Millie's. Based on condition and placement, we believe she didn't survive. The words shredded through her. Claire staggered back, covering her mouth, a raw sob tearing free before she could stop it. The room seemed to close in around her, the fluorescent lights blinding, the air suddenly too thin. But Hale wasn't finished. He slid the manila folder toward her. "There's more." Along with Millie's belongings, we found documentation. Receipts, travel stubs, false IDs. Leads that indicate Lily may still be alive. We believe she was moved after the cruise, kept hidden in different locations. If this is accurate, she's still out there. Claire froze, tears blurring her vision. The whiplash was almost cruel. One daughter gone, the other possibly breathing somewhere in the shadows. She sank into a chair, her hands trembling violently. "Mrs. Whitlock," Hale said, his voice low but steady. "This isn't over. We got new ground to cover, and fast. But you need to prepare yourself. The people who took your daughters aren't small time. This is organized. Bigger than Ashford. Bigger than Blackridge. And now we're in it." Claire pressed her palms together, forcing herself to breathe through the storm inside her chest. Her daughters had been everything. And now, one was gone forever, but the other still needed her. She lifted her gaze, locking onto Hale's with a resolve that startled even her. "Then let's burn every last one of them down." And with those words, the hunt began anew. Rain slicked across the streets of Blackridge as Claire followed Detective Hale through the precinct's sterile halls. She clutched her coat tight, her hair damp from the storm outside, her mind still spinning from the suitcase and the ribbon inside it. The ribbon was proof of loss, but it was also proof of existence. And if Millie's end was now undeniable, then Lily's survival became her only oxygen. Hale led her into a smaller briefing room, dimly lit, with a wall-mounted screen flickering in shades of gray. A technician tapped at a laptop, and grainy footage filled the display. A man in a maintenance uniform pushing a cart down a cruise ship corridor. His posture was casual, but there was something calculated in the way he avoided each camera's direct gaze. "That's him," Hale said flatly. "Victor Duval." Claire stepped closer, her stomach twisting. The man's face was partially obscured by a cap, but she could see enough. The sharp jaw, the quick flick of his eyes, the casual arrogance in his stride. He looked ordinary, the way predators always did until you looked harder. Hale clicked to the next image. A close-up, still pulled from another angle. The same man, but now with his head tilted just enough for the light to hit his features. Narrow eyes, a faint scar near his temple. Claire's hands balled into fists. "That's the man who took my daughters?" Hale nodded grimly. "Boarded under a false name. Bought his ticket with a prepaid card. Disappeared the morning after your girls were last seen. We've been chasing threads ever since, but he covers his tracks well. Too well." Claire's pulse thundered in her ears. "Then why now? Why would he leave behind that suitcase?" The technician glanced at Hale, uncertain whether to speak. Hale gave a curt nod. "It wasn't accidental," the detective said. "He's careful. Too careful to lose track of something that incriminating, which means one of two things. Either he's slipping," Hale's voice hardened, "or he wants us to find it." Claire shivered, an icy dread curling down her spine. Why would he want that? To remind us he's in control. Hale's jaw clenched. Men like Duval play with their prey. He's taunting us. Taunting you. Claire looked back at the screen, at the shadow of the man who had stolen her children, and for the first time, she wished she could step through the glass and tear him apart with her bare hands. Hale cut the screen off. "We've got reason to believe Duval owns property under different aliases. Shell companies, fake trusts. One of them is a cabin about 2 hours from Ashford. Remote. He's used it before. We'll be moving on it tonight." The word slammed into Claire like a lightning bolt. And you think Lily might be there? Hale didn't answer immediately. His silence was worse than denial. Finally, he said, "It's a possibility. But Claire, you need to prepare yourself. We don't know what we'll find." She swallowed hard, her throat raw. "Then I'm coming with you." Hale shook his head instantly. "Absolutely not. This isn't a vigilante mission. It's police work. Dangerous police work." But Claire stepped forward, her voice trembling but unyielding. "You don't understand. For 10 months, I've sat in my house and waited for news that never came. I've stared at walls, read every word of those files until they burned holes in my head. And now, finally, there's a chance, any chance, that I might get my daughter back. Don't tell me to sit home and wait again. I can't." Her voice cracked, and for a moment, the room was heavy with her desperation. Hale studied her, his face unreadable, until at last he sighed, dragging a hand over his stubbled jaw. "You'll stay in the car," he said gruffly. "No arguments. You don't move until I say." Claire nodded, relief and dread mingling in her chest. She would have agreed to anything, as long as she wasn't left behind again. The drive to the cabin was a blur of wet roads and flashing patrol lights. Convoy cars wound their way through the dark forest outside Ashford, headlights sweeping across skeletal trees that clawed at the sky. Claire sat in the back of Hale's unmarked sedan, her nails digging into the seatbelt strap as she fought to keep breathing. Hale drove in silence, his eyes locked on the road. Rain streaked down the windshield in silver veins. Finally he spoke, voice low. "You asked me once why I stayed on your case after the leads went cold." Claire glanced at him, startled. She remembered that night, her voice bitter, accusing him of giving up, of treating her daughters like statistics. "I didn't answer then," Hale continued, "but the truth is, I lost a sister when I was a kid. She was only 12. Walked home from school and never made it. We never found her." His jaw tightened. "So when I saw your case come across my desk, I promised myself I wouldn't let it go the way hers did." Claire's chest tightened, unexpected tears rising in her eyes. For the first time, she saw not just a detective but the man beneath, the boy who had carried a ghost his whole life. "Thank you," she whispered. Hale didn't respond, but his grip on the wheel softened. The convoy slowed as they approached a narrow dirt road cutting into the woods. At the end of it, barely visible through the trees, was the cabin. Small, isolated, its windows dark. A faint curl of smoke rose from the chimney, vanishing quickly into the mist. Claire's pulse spiked. Lily could be in there. Hale pulled to a stop behind the lead car. Officers in tactical gear fanned out silently, their boots crunching on wet gravel. Claire pressed her forehead to the window, her breath fogging the glass as she watched. The team moved swiftly, surrounding the cabin. Hale gave one last look back at her. "Stay put." Then he was gone, melting into the night with the others. Claire gripped the door handle, her entire body trembling, every second stretched like wire pulled too tight. She imagined Lily inside, alone, terrified. She imagined Victor Duval, that smirk in the shadows. Suddenly, the night cracked open. Shouts. A crash of splintering wood as the front door burst inward. Lights flashed through the trees, beams slicing across rain and smoke. Claire strained forward, her heart thundering, desperate for a glimpse of what lay inside. Then a gunshot split the air. Claire gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Another shout followed, indistinct over the roar of her own heartbeat. And then silence, the kind of silence that meant everything had changed. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, until at last the cabin door swung open again. Hale emerged, his expression carved from stone, his coat plastered to his frame with rain. Claire threw the car door open, stumbling toward him. "Did you find her?" she demanded, her voice raw. Hale's eyes flicked toward her, haunted and unreadable. He reached out, steadying her by the arm. "There was someone inside," he said quietly, "but it wasn't Lily." The night air around the cabin was thick with smoke and the copper sting of gunpowder. Rain hissed against the roof, drumming on the soaked earth where boot prints led back to the police convoy. Claire's heart was hammering so violently she barely felt Hale's hand on her arm as he steadied her. His eyes, shadowed under the brim of his cap, told her more than his words could. This wasn't over, not even close. There was someone inside, Hale repeated, voice taut. But it wasn't Lily. Claire's throat constricted. Then who? Hale hesitated, as though weighing whether she could handle the truth. Then he turned toward the cabin and gestured for her to follow, though his stride was slow, reluctant. Claire's legs wobbled beneath her, each step sinking into mud as she crossed the threshold into the ruined front room. The place reeked of damp wood and stale smoke. Furniture was sparse. A sagging couch, a table with cigarette burns, empty cans scattered across the floor. At the center of it all, lit by the harsh beam of an officer's flashlight, sat a man in his 30s. His wrists were bound with zip ties, his cheek mottled purple where the butt of a rifle had struck him. His eyes darted wildly between the officers surrounding him, then settled on Claire with something darker than fear, something close to recognition. "Who is he?" Claire whispered. Hale's answer was grim. "His name's Jonah Creel. Local drifter. Rap sheet full of thefts and assaults. We've had his name flagged before, but nothing that tied him directly to Duval." Claire's stomach turned. So why was he here? That question seemed to hang heavier than the smoke. Hale crouched in front of Jonah, his tone hard but measured. "Where is she?" Jonah spat blood onto the floor, his smirk thin and jagged. "Which one you mean, detective? The one in the box or the one still breathing?" Claire's knees buckled, and she caught herself against the doorway. Rage flared through her grief. She wanted to lunge at him, tear the truth out with her bare hands. Hale's voice dropped an octave. "You're on thin ice. Talk now, or I'll make sure you're buried under every charge we can find. Where's the girl?" Jonah's grin widened, grotesque in the flashlight's glare. "He told me not to say. Said if I opened my mouth, she'd be next. But you know what?" He leaned forward, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I think he wants you to chase him." The room seemed to tilt around Claire. Duval, always one step ahead, leaving trails like breadcrumbs for wolves. Hale straightened, expression unreadable. "Get him out of here," he ordered the officers. Jonah was dragged to his feet, still smirking, his eyes never leaving Claire. As they shoved him toward the waiting patrol cars, he called back over his shoulder. "You'll never take her back alive. She's his prize now." Claire's scream tore from her throat before she realized it. An officer blocked her path as she lurched forward, her fury threatening to shatter her body. Hale's hand closed around her shoulder, anchoring her. "Don't give him what he wants," Hale said, his voice low, almost pleading. "He's nothing but bait." Claire forced herself to breathe, though every inhale scraped like glass. "He knew Millie," she whispered. "He knew about the suitcase. He knows where Lily is." Hale's jaw tightened. "Yes, and he's terrified of Duval more than he is of us. Which tells me one thing. Duval is close. Closer than we thought." The ride back to Black Ridge was silent but electric, the tension in the car wound tighter than steel wire. Claire stared out at the blurred trees, her reflection faint in the window. Jonah's words rattled in her skull. She's his prize now. At the precinct, Hale led her into the war room, where maps of Ashford's outskirts were tacked across the walls, strings crisscrossing like veins of obsession. On one map, red pins marked sightings of a blue pickup. On another, circles closing on properties registered under false identities. "He's not hiding randomly," Hale murmured, studying the maps as though they might whisper their secrets. "He's moving in patterns, always circling Ashford, like he's tethered to it somehow." Claire forced her voice steady. "Why Ashford? Why my daughters?" Hale didn't answer immediately. He rubbed his temple, fatigue carving deep lines in his face. "We don't know yet. But predators like Duval, they don't pick victims by accident. They pick symbols. And your daughters, they were twins. That matters to him." Claire's chest constricted. "You're saying he targeted them on purpose?" "Yes." Hale's eyes met hers, sharp as broken glass. "And until we understand why, we'll never predict his next move." Hours later, long after the precinct quieted, Claire sat alone at a desk littered with files. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly. She flipped through a folder on Jonah Creel, each mugshot colder than the last. Nothing about him screamed connection to Duval, until she reached the last page, a list of known associates. Among them, a name she didn't recognize, Harlan Duval. Claire's stomach dropped. She scanned the note scribbled beside it. A strange brother. Last known residence, Ashford County. Her pulse hammered. Victor Duval wasn't some faceless monster born from nowhere. He had roots, ties to Ashford, and if his brother was still nearby, then maybe, just maybe, that was a key to unlocking where he'd taken Lily. She shoved the file toward Hale's office, her voice breaking the silence. I found something. Hale appeared in the doorway, tie loosened, eyes bloodshot. Claire thrust the page at him. He studied it, his face darkening. Harlan, he muttered, as if tasting a sour memory. I've heard that name before. A bar fight years back. Violent streak. Dropped off the grid. He looked up, jaw set. If Harlan's still in Ashford, he might be the one person alive who understands how Victor thinks. Claire's hands trembled. Then find him. Please. He's our only chance. Hale nodded once, a spark of grim resolve lighting his tired eyes. We will. But Claire, if Harlan's anything like his brother, talking to him might unleash more than answers. The room chilled, and Claire realized a terrible truth. Every step forward only pulled her deeper into Duval's web, and the man who held her daughter wasn't just hunting her. He was drawing her in, thread by thread, until escape would no longer be possible. The rain hadn't let up by the time Hale steered the cruiser out of Blackridge and onto the county road that led north into Ashford. The wipers scraped back and forth, fighting the deluge, but the water still blurred everything into streaks of gray and black. Claire pressed her forehead against the cold window, watching the trees flash past. Each mile dragged them deeper into the place that had birthed Victor Duval, and, she feared, the nightmare consuming her life. Harlan's last trace puts him at the north edge of Ashford, Hale said, keeping his eyes on the road. A rotting farmhouse. He inherited it after their parents passed. County records show it still in his name, though no one's seen him in years. Claire turned her head, voice low. You really think he'll be there? Hale shrugged slightly. Men like Harlan don't stray far from the only thing tying them to the world. Blood, land, hate. The way he said hate made Claire shiver. They arrived just as daylight bled into dusk. The house loomed at the end of a long gravel drive, its paint peeled away by decades of neglect, its windows black hollows that reflected nothing. The fields around were overgrown with weeds that bowed under the weight of the rain. The place didn't just look abandoned. It radiated hostility, as though the earth itself wanted them gone. Hale parked at the gate and cut the engine. Stay behind me, he warned, slipping a hand toward the grip of his holstered weapon. Claire followed. Every crunch of gravel under her shoes sounding like a gunshot. They mounted the sagging porch, where boards moaned under their weight. Hale rapped on the door with the side of his fist. Harlan Duval, this is Detective Hale. We need to talk. For a long moment, nothing. Then, from within the house, a shuffle, the squeal of rusty hinges. The door cracked open just enough for one eye, gray, cold, and watchful. What do you want? The voice was gravel dragged across stone. Hale kept his tone even. It's about your brother, Victor. The door opened wider, revealing a man who could have been Victor's reflection if time had chosen cruelty instead of cunning. Harlan was gaunt, his skin weathered, his hair long and streaked with white. He wore a threadbare flannel shirt and jeans stained dark with oil or worse. You cops don't give up, do you? He muttered, stepping back. Come on in before you drown out there. The interior smelled of damp wood, tobacco, and something metallic. Dust coated every surface, and bottles littered the floor like breadcrumbs of despair. A single lantern flickered on a table, casting shadows that stretched and swayed. Harlan dropped into a chair and lit a cigarette, exhaling smoke that curled like serpents toward the ceiling. His eyes flicked to Claire, sharp with recognition. You're the mother, he said flatly. The one he took from. Claire's heart lurched. Where is she? Where's my daughter? Harlan chuckled bitterly, a sound with no joy in it. You think I keep tabs on my brother's trophies? No, I got out of that madness years ago. Hale's jaw tightened. Then you know what he's doing. Harlan leaned back, the chair creaking. I know enough. Victor's not a man. He's a hunger-wearing skin. Always was. Even when we were boys, he'd watch things too long. Dead animals on the road, girls at the schoolyard. Didn't matter. He'd stare until people felt it on their necks. He dragged from a cigarette, eyes distant. When our folks died, he got worse. No tether left, just the sickness. Claire's voice trembled. Why didn't you stop him? Harlan's gaze snapped to hers hard. You think anyone stops Victor once he sets his eyes on something? He feeds on control, on taking. The only reason I'm alive is because I walked away before he noticed I mattered. Silence pressed in, broken only by the rain hammering the roof. Hale leaned forward. If you want him stopped, help us. Where would he go? Where does he hide? Harlan stubbed out his cigarette with deliberate slowness. Victor's drawn to Ashford like a moth to fire. Always comes back, no matter how far he roams. He's got places here. Old barns, hunting shacks, a network of spots he used since we were kids. But his lips curve into something between a sneer and a warning. You don't find Victor. He lets you. Claire's fist clenched. Then why bring me here? Why leave clues? Harlan's eyes softened almost imperceptibly, as though he pitied her. Because he wants you to follow. That's the game. He breaks you piece by piece, until when you finally see her, you don't know if you got anything left to take her back. The words hollowed Claire's chest. She pictured Lily, alive but fragile, waiting in some shadowed corner of Ashford while Victor pulled the strings. Hale broke the silence. Tell us where to start. Harlan's hand trembled as he lit another cigarette. There's an old mill down by Black Hollow Creek. Been rotting 30 years. He liked it there, said it smelled like history and bones. If he's back in Ashford, that's where you'll find his trail. Claire leaned forward, desperation raw in her voice. Will Lily be there? Harlan exhaled smoke slowly, eyes fixed on hers. If she is, she won't be whole. Not after 10 months with him. The cruelty of his words sliced through her, but underneath was something else. Truth. Hale stood, signaling their time was up. You'll stay here. Don't leave town. Harlan smirked, tapping ash into a rusted tin. Don't worry, detective. My brother's ghost keeps me plenty tied. The drive back was heavier than before. The storm outside no match for the one inside Claire. Every mile felt like a countdown. She stared at the map spread across her lap, her finger tracing the crooked path to Black Hollow Creek. He's toying with us, she whispered, using his own brother to lure us closer. Maybe, Hale said, but we don't have the luxury of ignoring it. The mill's our first real lead in months. If Lily's alive, we move now. Claire's breath caught. And if it's another trap? Hale's eyes, reflected briefly in the windshield's glow, were hard as stone. Then we walk into it with our eyes open. Because the only thing worse than falling into his trap is doing nothing while Lily waits for us. The road ahead curved into darkness, and Claire gripped the edge of her seat, bracing herself. Somewhere beyond the rain, the old mill stood waiting, a relic of decay, and maybe the last place her daughter's voice still echoed. And for the first time, Claire realized this wasn't just a rescue. It was a reckoning. The road to Black Hollow Creek narrowed until it was little more than a scar carved into forest. The cruiser's headlights caught raindrops and twisted branches, making the woods seem alive, reaching. The storm had dwindled to a mist, but fog rolled thick from the ground, swallowing the path ahead. Claire sat forward in her seat, her eyes scanning the blurred trees. Every shadow seemed to move. Every bend in the road whispered Lily's name. When they finally broke through the tree-line, the mill rose before them like a skeleton left to rot. Its wooden frame leaned crookedly, eaten away by decades of weather. Rust streaked the towering water wheel, frozen mid-turn. The windows gaped empty, jagged with shards of glass that glinted faintly in the moonlight. Hale killed the engine. The silence that followed almost unbearable. "Stay close," he said, voice low. Claire nodded, though her legs trembled as she stepped out into the cold mist. The air smelled of mildew and stagnant water, thick with the scent of rust. Black Hollow Creek itself snaked beside the mill, its surface dark and still, reflecting the rotted building in broken ripples. They approached the entrance, where a door hung from one hinge like a warning. Hale drew his flashlight and weapon, the beam cutting through the dark. Claire clutched her coat tight, every instinct screaming to turn back. But Lily was out there. Inside, the mill was a cathedral of ruin. Beams of moonlight pierced through gaps in the roof, illuminating dust that swirled like ash. Machinery rusted in place loomed in the corners, their gears long silent. Rats scurried along the rafters, the sound of claws skittering through the hollow silence. Hale swept his light across the room, then froze. "Look," he said, on the floor near the far wall. Someone had arranged objects with deliberate care. A child's shoelace, a broken plastic comb, a paper bracelet from a carnival or fair. Claire's chest constricted. These weren't random. They were offerings. Her hand shook as she crouched, lifting the bracelet. The faded ink still bore the outline of a butterfly. She remembered that day. Lily had begged for cotton candy. Millie had won a stuffed bear at a ring toss. The twins had worn their bracelets for weeks, refusing to take them off. Her vision blurred with tears. He's been here. With her. Hale's jaw hardened. He left this for us to find. The air shifted then, faint but undeniable, a creak on the stairs leading to the second floor. Hale motioned for silence, raising his weapon. Claire's pulse thundered in her ears as they crept toward the staircase. Each step groaned beneath their weight, threatening to give them away. The second floor was worse than the first. Rain leaked through holes in the roof, dripping into puddles that reflected the flashlight beam. More items were scattered across the floor. A child's drawing, crumpled and water-stained. A stuffed animal missing an eye. A hair clip shaped like a star. Each one a piece of a life stolen. Then a sound. Soft, deliberate. Breathing. Hale swung the beam toward the far corner, and Claire's heart stopped. A figure crouched in the shadows. At first, she thought it was Victor, but as the light steadied, she saw it was a girl. Thin, pale, her hair matted. She shielded her eyes from the sudden glare, whimpering. Claire stumbled forward. "Lily?" The girl flinched back, shaking her head violently. "No, don't hurt me." Her voice was hoarse, ragged from disuse. Hale lowered his weapon, his tone calm. "We're not here to hurt you. We're here to help." Claire's knees hit the floor beside the girl. Up close, she saw the truth. This wasn't Lily. The girl's features were different, older by a year or two, but her small frame bore the same marks. Bruises, a thin scar across her temple, the hollow look of someone who had lived in terror too long. Claire's chest ached with both relief and despair. "Who are you?" she whispered. The girl swallowed hard. "Hannah." Her lips trembled. "He said he'd come back. Said if I moved, he'd kill me." Claire brushed a strand of filthy hair from the girl's face, her tears falling freely. "You're safe now, Hannah. He's not here." But even as she said it, she felt the lie. The mill was too quiet, too staged. Victor's absence was its own presence. Hale radioed for backup. His voice steady though his hand was white-knuckled around the device. "We've got a survivor. Female, approximately 12. Need med evac at Black Hollow Mill." As the static faded, Claire caught Hannah's whisper, almost inaudible. "He left her here once. Your girl. He brought her, and then he took her again." Claire's blood ran cold. "Where?" Hannah's wide eyes filled with tears. "He said Ashford was just the beginning. He said he had a place where no one would look, where the water eats the land." "The swamp," Hale muttered. "The fenlands." The words chilled Claire. The fenlands stretched for miles beyond Ashford, a drowned forest where locals said even the earth didn't want to remember. Before she could speak, a sharp clang rang out below, the sound of metal striking metal. Hale's flashlight whipped the staircase. Nothing, just shadows and silence. He motioned Claire back, placing himself between her and the noise. They waited, every second drawn out like wire pulled thin. Then, faint but deliberate, a voice rose from the darkness below. Closer. Claire's heart seized. It was Victor's voice. Calm, amused. Closer, Claire. You're almost where I want you. The words slithered up the stairs, wrapping around her like chains. Hannah whimpered, pressing herself against Claire's side. Hale kept his weapon trained, his breath controlled, his eyes narrowing into the dark. But when he finally stormed down the stairs, the lower level was empty. No footprints in the dust. No doors open. Only silence. Claire remained upstairs, her body trembling, clutching Hannah as though the girl might vanish if she let go. She stared at the darkness below, knowing without doubt Victor had been here. He had watched them, and he had left only what he wanted them to find. The game was far from over. The fenlands began where the road gave up. Asphalt cracked, then dissolved into gravel, then finally into mud that swallowed the tires of Hale's cruiser with a groan. He cursed under his breath, slamming into park. From here, they would walk. Claire stepped out first, boots sinking an inch into the damp earth. The air hung thick, saturated with the smell of moss and stagnant water. Fog curled low to the ground, drifting in pale tendrils that made the landscape shift and dissolve with every step. She wrapped her coat tighter. But the cold wasn't what gnawed at her. It was a feeling of being watched. Hale slung a pack over his shoulder, his expression carved from stone. Keep close. The fenlands stretch for miles. If you get turned around in this fog, you won't find your way back. Claire nodded, though her pulse hammered so violently she wondered if Hale could hear it. She glanced over her shoulder at the treeline, at the mill beyond hidden by mist, and thought of Hannah. The girl's broken voice echoed in her memory. He said Ashford was just a beginning. He said he had a place where no one would look, where the water eats the land. Now they were here. The swamp welcomed them with silence. No birds called. No insects hummed. Even the water seemed to hold its breath. Gnarled cypress trees rose like sentinels, their roots twisted into claws that clutched at the mud. Tangled vines hung from branches like nooses. Pools of dark water reflected fragments of sky, broken by the occasional ripple. Something moving just beneath the surface. Claire forced herself forward, each step heavy. Lily's face flickered in her mind, clear as the day she was born. Dark hair curled against her cheek, eyes too big for her tiny face, a cry that had filled her old Ashford home. That memory was her anchor now. If Victor thought he could strip her of hope, he was wrong. They followed what might have once been a path, though time and flood had devoured it. Wooden planks, rotted through, jutted from the mud at crooked angles. The remnants of a footbridge sagged across a channel of black water. Hale tested it with his boot, then gestured for Claire to follow. The wood groaned but held. Halfway across, a sound shattered the silence. A splash. Claire froze. The water below rippled violently, as though something enormous had passed beneath. She gripped the railing, or what was left of it, as Hale shone his flashlight down. Only murky depths. Stare back. Keep moving, he said, though his eyes lingered on the dark water a beat too long. On the other side, the path twisted deeper into the swamp. Fog thickened, pressing close, swallowing sound. Claire's skin prickled. Every time she looked left or right, she thought she saw movement, something slipping just out of sight, weaving between the trees. Then she heard it, laughter, soft, almost playful, carried on the mist. Claire's breath caught. Hale! He heard it too. His hand went to his weapon, his jaw set. The laughter came again, clearer this time, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. Victor! Claire's legs shook, but she moved forward, drawn by the sound like a moth to flame. Hale caught her arm, forcing her to meet his eyes. That's what he wants. Don't chase his voice. He's leading us. But what if... Her throat constricted. What if he has her here? Hale didn't answer. The silence between them said enough. They pressed on until the ground widened into a clearing of sorts, though the swamp still pressed on all sides. At its center rose a shack on stilts, its wood warped and blackened with age. Windows gaped open like wounds. A rope ladder dangled from the porch, frayed but still intact. Claire's stomach dropped. He's been here. The shack reeked of forethought, of staging, like the mill, a place chosen for effect. Hale scanned the perimeter, flashlight slicing through fog. Stay behind me. They climbed the ladder one at a time, boards groaning beneath their weight. Inside, the shack was nearly bare. A table, a chair, and on the table, a single object on the beam of Hale's light, a cassette recorder. Claire's throat tightened. Hale pressed play. Static hissed, then a voice, Victor's voice, filled the room. Calm, mocking. You're walking deeper now. Good. That means you're ready. Every step you take brings you closer, but not to her. No, Claire, not yet. You'll find others first. The ones the world forgot. The ones no one came for. And when you see them, you'll know the truth. You were never searching for Lily. You were searching for me. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Her knees trembled so violently she had to grip the table. Hale stopped the tape, his jaw tight. He's baiting you. Don't listen to it. But she had heard every word. You were never searching for Lily. You were searching for me. A noise outside snapped their attention back. A branch breaking. Hale moved to the window, scanning the fog. Stay inside. Claire peered past him, her heart pounding. At first, there was nothing, just the same endless gray. Then movement, a shape emerging from the mist. Not Victor, a woman. Her dress clung wet to her thin frame, hair plastered to her face. She walked barefoot through the mud, eyes wide and vacant, like she was sleepwalking. When she reached the base of the shack, she looked up, and her face twisted into something Claire would never forget. A scream that tore soundlessly from her mouth, her hands clawing at the air. Then she was gone, swallowed by the fog as if she had never been there. Claire staggered back from the window. Did you see? Hale's face was pale, but he only muttered, We keep moving. The shack's floor creaked under her as she followed him out, her mind spiraling. The Fenlands weren't just a hiding place. They were Victor's theater, his stage. Every step forward, every clue, every apparition, he was orchestrating it all. And somewhere in this drowned forest, Lily waited, or her memory did. The question now wasn't if Claire would find her daughter. It was if she'd survive finding the truth. The Fenlands were a different kind of dark. Out here, miles beyond the lights of Ashford, the swamp seemed to swallow sound and bend time. The pines leaned crooked, their branches clawing at the moon like skeletal fingers. Mist crawled low over the Blackwater, curling around Claire's boots as she trudged after Detective Hale. Every step was a fight through mud that sucked like quicksand, each splash echoing like a whisper in the silence. Claire's chest burned with the cold air, but it wasn't the weather that left her trembling. It was a hope she had been warned against too many times. The dangerous, ruinous hope that maybe, just maybe, they would find Lily tonight. Hale's flashlight beam cut through the fog, landing on a crooked hunting cabin slouched against the tree line. It looked abandoned decades ago. Roof caved on one side, vines strangling the rotting wood. Windows patched with cardboard and duct tape. A place the swamp wanted to reclaim. This is it, Hale whispered. His voice was low, but there was a tremor in it that Claire had never heard before. Property records show Carnes owned this under a shell company. Locals say no one's been out here for years. Claire's pulse pounded in her ears. She wanted to rush forward, to tear open the door with her bare hands, but Hale raised a hand to stop her. He crouched low, checking the threshold. Locks had been changed recently. Someone's been here. Her heart leapt. Lily. Hale motioned her back, then forced the rusted padlock with a crowbar. The sound of metal snapping seemed too loud, too final. He pushed the door open, and a stale, fetid smell rolled out, a stench that made Claire gag. It was rot, damp wood, and something sour that clung to her nostrils. Inside, the air was colder. Their flashlights swept across walls scrawled with peeling paint and damp stains. The floor littered with beer cans and cigarette butts. At first glance, it looked like nothing but a squat for drifters. But then Claire saw it. A trapdoor hidden beneath a moth-eaten rug, the edges ringed with fresh scrape marks. Her legs nearly gave out. "Oh, God," she whispered. Hale's jaw clenched. He crouched, pressing his ear to the wood before slowly prying it open. The hinges wailed like something alive. A rush of cold, Stagnant air seeped out, and with it, the faintest metallic tang. Blood. They descended carefully, the narrow staircase groaning under their weight. The basement ceiling was low, lined with exposed beams. Claire ducked under one, her breath trembling, and then her light caught the far wall. She froze. Polaroids. Hundreds of them. Rows upon rows. Strung on wires like grotesque laundry. Faces of children, boys and girls. Eyes wide. Lips pressed in, some bruised, some blank with terror. Each photo labeled with dates, initials, some crossed out. And beneath them, shelves stacked with VHS tapes, their spines marked with the same coded system. Claire's stomach dropped while burning her throat. This wasn't a hiding place. It was an archive, a monument to cruelty. "No," she whispered, backing into Hale's arm. "No, no, no." Hale swallowed hard, his light shaking as it tracked across the room. Jesus Christ. This is bigger than we thought. Claire staggered forward, her eyes darting across the faces, desperate, frantic. Then she saw it. Her knees buckled. There, pinned near the center, was Lily, not from 10 months ago, not a faded flyer photo, but Lily now, her hair longer, thinner, her face hollow, eyes sunken, but alive. The Polaroid was fresh, the corners still curling from development. And the background, Claire knew it instantly, the mural of the Ashford Library. She had walked past it hundreds of times. Lily had been there. Recently, her scream tore from her chest, raw and broken. "She's here. She's been here the whole time." Hale grabbed her shoulders, steadying her. His own face was pale, shaken. "This changes everything. Victor isn't hiding her in the swamp. He's bringing her into town, right under our noses." Claire's breath came in sharp gasps. "He's been circling me, watching me." But the horror didn't end there. On the table below the photographs lay a box. Inside were belongings, ribbons, small shoes, bracelets, tokens from children whose faces stared down at them from the wires. Claire's trembling hands brushed over the items until she froze again. A sympathy card. Her blood ran cold. She knew the handwriting, the curling, feminine script that had haunted her grief. She had a dozen of these cards unopened at home, sent during the darkest days after the twins vanished. She lifted it with shaking hands. Flipping it open, the signature made her vision blur. Marissa Duval. Hale cursed under his breath. She's not just complicit. She's here. She's been here in Ashford. Claire dropped the card, her chest constricting as the realization sank in. The enemy wasn't miles away. They had walked among her neighbors, mailed her false comfort, infiltrated her grief. Victor hadn't just stolen her daughter. He had mocked her, taunted her, invaded her sanctuary. The sound of Claire's sobs filled the chamber, echoing off the damp stone walls. Hale stepped closer, his face tight with fury. "We're not just dealing with Victor. Marissa's running this with him. And if Lily's alive, they're moving her constantly, maybe even using Ashford as a stage." Claire clutched Lily's photo to her chest, her tears staining the corner. "He's playing a game, and I've been too blind to see it." A floorboard creaked above them. Hale raised his gun instantly, his flashlight beam snapping to staircase. Claire froze, heart hammering so violently she thought it might shatter her ribs. But the steps creaked again, deliberate, slow. Someone was in the cabin, someone who knew this chamber. Hale motioned silently, pressing a finger to his lips. The two of them flattened against the wall, breath shallow. The basement door slammed shut above, plunging them into suffocating darkness. The lock snapped back into place, trapping them inside the chamber of ghosts. And then silence. Claire clutched the photo tighter, her pulse roaring in her ears. She didn't need to see his face to know. Victor had been here, and now he knew they had found his trophies. The darkness in the chamber was suffocating. Without their flashlights, it pressed in like a living thing, wrapping itself around Claire's throat. She clutched Lily's photograph to her chest, the edges digging into her skin, as if to remind her it was real, that her daughter was still out there. Somewhere above, the sound of footsteps had faded into silence. But silence was worse. Silence meant he was waiting. Detective Hale swore under his breath, fumbling to relight his flashlight. The beam sputtered weakly before flaring back to life, casting a pale circle over the wall of Polaroids. The children's faces seemed to watch them now, their blank eyes reflecting the light like ghosts. "Stay close," Hale whispered, his voice low and steady, though Claire could see the tightness in his jaw. He moved toward the staircase, testing the trapdoor. It didn't budge. Locked from above. Claire's chest tightened. "He knows we're down here." Hale nodded grimly. "And he wants us to know he knows." Claire tried to swallow, but her throat was bone dry. She thought of all the times she had begged the universe for answers, for proof that Lily was still alive. And now she had it. Proof stamped into glossy Polaroid film, fresh enough to smell the chemicals. But with it came something she hadn't anticipated, terror beyond measure. If Victor had kept her daughter this close, what else had he done? How many times had he circled her home in Ashford, laughing as she clung to fading hope? Hale's eyes scanned the basement. "We need another way out. Places like this, they don't build them without exits." Claire forced herself to breathe. She looked past the shelves, past the grotesque trophies, until her beam landed on a section of wall that looked different. The wood paneling there was newer, less water-stained than the rest. She pointed with a trembling hand. "There." Hale crossed quickly, running his palm along the boards. "Good eye," he pressed, and a sliver of light seeped through a crack. A hidden door. Before he could pry it open, the floor above creaked again. This time it wasn't footsteps. It was dragging. Heavy, deliberate dragging like something or someone being pulled across the boards. Claire's stomach turned. She whispered, Is he trying to scare us?" Hale didn't answer. He gritted his teeth, wedging the crowbar into the seam of the panel. Wood splintered as he forced it open, revealing a narrow crawl space. The air that seeped out was damp, but fresher than the rot inside the chamber. "Go," Hale ordered, his voice sharp. "Now." Claire hesitated, her grip tightening on Lily's photo. "What if he's—" "Claire." Hale snapped, softer this time. "If we stay, we're dead." She crawled in first, the space barely wide enough for her shoulders. Her palms scraped against damp earth and jagged stone, but she pushed forward, teeth clenched. Behind her, Hale pulled the panels shut, plunging them into near darkness once more, the flashlight beam jittering against the dirt ceiling. The tunnel was long. Too long. Every inch forward made Claire feel like the earth was collapsing around her, pressing down, threatening to smother her. But the image of Lily, thin, hollow-eyed, alive, kept her moving. Halfway through, a sound stopped her cold. Whistling. A tune, faint but unmistakable, drifting down the tunnel from somewhere ahead. A jaunty, almost childlike melody that didn't belong in the swamp. Her blood ran cold. It was the same tune the ship's magician had played when he performed for the girls on the cruise. Victor had been here. He had planned this. Hale cursed, pushing her forward. "Keep moving. Don't stop." Claire's chest constricted as the tunnel widened slightly, enough for them to crouch upright. The whistling stopped, replaced by the echo of dripping water. At the far end, a rusted metal grate barred their way. Hale braced his shoulder against it and shoved. It screeched, the sound too loud, too exposed, but finally gave way, clattering into weeds outside. They stumbled out into the swamp air, gasping like drowning victims breaking the surface. The mist clung to their faces, but the open space felt like freedom. Hale scanned the tree line, gun raised. Then Claire saw it. On a tree directly ahead, nailed into bark, was another Polaroid. Fresh. The edges glistened with dew. She stumbled forward, her heart in her throat. The photo showed Lily again, standing in front of a playground Claire recognized instantly. Ashford Elementary School, Lily's old school. The timestamp was 2 days ago. Claire's knees nearly gave way. He was there. He took her there. Hale's jaw tightened. He's not just holding her. He's staging her. He wants you to see. But before Claire could respond, a sharp crack split the air. A bullet tore through the tree trunk inches from her head, splintering bark. "Down!" Hale shouted, tackling her into the mud. Another shot rang out, echoing through the swamp. Claire's ears rang, her heart hammering against the earth. From the darkness, a voice carried, calm, taunting. "You're so close, Claire. Do you want her back?" Victor. Claire's blood froze. It was the first time she had heard his voice outside of police recordings. Smooth, almost gentle, but coiled with menace. Hale fired blindly toward the sound, the muzzle flash lighting the mist. "Run," he barked. "Back to the truck." Claire scrambled to her feet, clutching Lily's photo, mud sucking at her boots as she sprinted. Branches whipped her face, her lungs searing. Behind her, the swamp came alive with movement. Footsteps, splashes, laughter. Victor wasn't running after them. He was herding them. When they finally burst into the clearing where Hale's truck waited, Claire's chest was on fire. Hale shoved her into the passenger seat, leaping in behind the wheel. The engine roared, headlights cutting through the fog. But as they sped away, Claire's gaze caught the rearview mirror. On the edge of the swamp, half shrouded in mist, stood a man, tall, lean, his face shadowed. He raised a hand, not in threat, but in a wave meant for her. Claire's breast shattered. He had seen them. He wanted her to see him. Victor wasn't hiding anymore. He was playing in the open. The town of Ashford looked different now. It wasn't the place Claire had raised her daughters in, with its quaint brick sidewalks and tree-lined streets. Tonight, every corner hummed with menace, every shadow whispered with secrets. Victor had turned her home into a stage, and she was the unwilling lead in his play. Detective Hale drove in silence, headlights washing over shuttered storefronts as the truck barreled toward Blackridge headquarters. Claire sat rigid in the passenger seat, mud still streaked across her face and hands. She clutched Lily's photo so tightly the edges bent. Her heart hadn't slowed since she'd heard his voice in the swamp, calm, taunting, familiar. 2 days ago, she whispered, her voice breaking. "He had her at Ashford Elementary, where I used to drop them off for school. He's been circling my life this whole time." Hale's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "He's escalating. That ambush wasn't meant to kill us. It was meant to scare us, to drive you here back into Ashford, where he's already waiting." Claire turned, her eyes hollow but burning. "Then where's Lily now? If he's moving her through the town, she could be anywhere. Someone could have seen her. Or someone already has," Hale said grimly, and didn't realize it. The word sent a shiver through Claire. The sympathy cards. Marissa's handwriting. Neighbors she'd waved to. Strangers who'd held open doors. Any one of them could have been watching her, delivering false comfort, while her daughter was paraded through the streets. When they pulled into the Blackridge precinct lot, floodlights cast the building in stark relief. Hale parked abruptly and turned to her. "Listen to me, Claire. You can't go back to your house tonight. If Victor has been circling you, that's the first place he'll expect you. We'll set you up somewhere safe." But Claire shook her head, the first sparks of defiance cutting through her terror. "Safe? There's no safe. Not while he's out there. If he wanted to kill me, he could have done it in the swamp. He doesn't want me dead. He wants me broken. And I'm not giving him that." Hale's eyes softened just slightly. "Then what do you want?" Her answer was immediate. Lily back. And for him to pay. Inside the precinct, chaos reigned. Officers pored over the Polaroids and tapes recovered from the chamber. The walls plastered with timelines, maps, and faces. The scale of Victor and Marissa's operation was larger than anyone had feared. Hale briefed the task force, while Claire sat numbly at the edge of the room, her gaze fixed on the board. Dozens of children stared back at her from their photos. Victims, survivors, ghosts. And then she saw it. Another fresh Polaroid tacked hastily to the board. Lily again, this time standing at the edge of Ashford Park, her arms folded, face pale but defiant. Behind her, the carousel where she and Millie had once laughed together, spinning until they fell in the grass. The timestamp yesterday. Claire's vision swam. Her knees buckled, but she caught herself on the desk. "He's taunting me. He's showing me all the places we used to go." Hale's voice cut through the din. He's escalating his game, moving her to landmarks tied to Claire's past. It's psychological warfare, the chief swore. Then where's the next move? Hale looked at Claire, his expression grim. Where's the one place he knows she won't be able to stay away from? Claire's heart sank. She already knew. Home. The room erupted with orders. Surveillance teams dispatched. Units scrambling toward her street. Hale insisted on taking her himself. Against protocol, his gut telling him this wasn't just a trap for Lily. It was a trap for Claire. When they pulled into Ashford's quiet neighborhood, Claire's house loomed like a stranger. The curtain she hadn't touched in months fluttered in a faint breeze. One of the porch lights glowed dim, though she hadn't left it on. Hale cut the engine. "Stay here," he ordered. But Claire shook her head violently. She could be inside. "I'm not staying." They approached cautiously, guns drawn, flashlights cutting across the yard. The night was still unnaturally so, as though the entire street was holding its breath. Hale tried the front door, unlocked. Inside, the air was heavy with familiarity twisted into something rotten. The couch where Lily and Millie had once curled up with popcorn sat untouched, but a fresh Polaroid was taped to the TV screen. Claire ripped it down with shaking hands. Lily again, this time in Claire's kitchen. Same chip counter. Same faded wallpaper. The timestamp, tonight. Claire's breath shattered. She's been here. He brought her here. A noise upstairs froze them both. A floorboard creaked, deliberate, slow. Hale motioned silently, climbing the staircase with his gun raised. Claire followed, her every step a scream in her veins. The hallway stretched long and narrow, the door shut tight like watchful eyes. From Lily and Millie's old bedroom, a light glowed under the door. Claire's heart stopped. She reached for the knob, but Hale caught her wrist, shaking his head. He counted silently, 1, 2, 3, then kicked the door open. The room was empty, but on the twin bed, neatly placed, was Lily's favorite stuffed rabbit. Its fur was worn, one ear half torn, but its glassy eyes stared up at Claire like an accusation. Beside it lay another Polaroid, Lily sitting on that very bed, her eyes wide, her hands folded in her lap. The timestamp, less than an hour ago. Claire collapsed onto the bed, clutching the rabbit, her sobs tearing through the room. She was here. She was here. And then she noticed the writing scrawled on the back of the Polaroid, a message in a curling, feminine hand. 10 months. You've searched everywhere but here. Tomorrow we finish the story. Hale's face hardened. Marissa? Claire's fingers dug into the stuffed rabbit, fury boiling through her grief. She was in my house, with my daughter. From outside, a car engine roared to life. Headlights slashed through the bedroom window before tearing away into the night. Hale bolted to the window, but the vehicle was already gone, swallowed by darkness. Claire stood, her body trembling with rage and resolve. For 10 months she had lived in grief and helplessness, but no more. "They want to finish the story?" she whispered, her voice low, fierce. "Then I'll write the ending." Hale met her eyes, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he saw something new in her. Not just a mother's grief, a mother's wrath. Ashford was silent before dawn, the kind of silence that seemed to stretch and strain like the world itself was holding its breath. The streets glistened with dew, the carousel in Ashford Park creaked faintly in the wind, and the church bells, long broken, loomed like a dark omen. Claire stood at her kitchen window, clutching the stuffed rabbit Marissa had left on Lily's bed. The note still burned in her pocket. Tomorrow we finish the story. Tomorrow was now. Detective Hale moved behind her, loading his weapon with slow, deliberate clicks. "They want control," he said softly. "Every move they've made has been to keep you reacting, chasing. But they've tipped their hand. They're coming to you." Claire's jaw set. "Then let them." The precinct had deployed units across Ashford. Patrol cars posted at every exit road. Surveillance teams near landmarks Victor had used before. The school, the park, the bridge. But Claire knew deep in her chest that Victor wouldn't choose any of those. His final move had to be personal. It had to cut her to the core. At 5:14 a.m., the first call came in. An officer's trembling voice over Hale's radio. "We've got movement. Ashford Cemetery." A figure leading a child through the east gate. Claire's blood turned to ice. Millie's grave was there. She didn't wait for protocol. She bolted for the door. Hale shouting after her, then pounding close behind. Tires screamed as they tore down Ashford's narrow streets, the world blurring past in streaks of gray. The cemetery gates stood open, mist curled low to the ground, weaving through rows of headstones like restless spirits. Flashlights cut to fog as officers fanned out, but Claire moved like a woman possessed, her heart knowing where he would be. Millie's grave. And there they were. Victor, tall and calm as ever, his hand resting almost tenderly on Lily's shoulder. She looked thinner, paler, but her eyes locked on Claire's the second she appeared, a spark of desperate hope breaking through the fog. Marissa stood nearby, her coat drawn tight, a pistol glinting in her hand. 10 months, Victor said, his voice carrying across the graves like a sermon. 10 months of searching, of chasing shadows. And here we are where it began, where the first daughter rests and the second one returns. Claire's knees nearly gave, but she forced herself forward, her voice raw and shaking. Let her go, Victor. Let her come to me. He tilted his head, smiling faintly. You think this is about her? No, Claire. This has always been about you. About what a mother is willing to endure. How much pain she can carry before she breaks. Marissa's eyes gleamed with something colder than victory. You were supposed to crumble months ago, but you're still standing. That fascinates us. Hale's voice thundered from behind, gun raised, hands where I can see them. Now! Victor didn't flinch. His grip on Lily tightened just enough to make her whimper. Detective Hale, always a soldier, but you don't get to end this. Claire does. And then he produced it, a knife, small but gleaming, pressing it just below Lily's chin. The cemetery seemed to freeze. Choose, Victor said softly. Drop the rabbit, walk away, and Lily lives. Refuse, and she joins her sister in the ground. The stuffed rabbit slipped in Claire's trembling hands. Every nerve screamed at her to run, to throw herself forward, to claw Lily free. But Victor's eyes were dead and certain. One wrong move, and it would end before it began. Her breath came ragged. You don't want her blood on your hands, she whispered. He leaned closer to Lily, his cheek brushing hers. But maybe I do. And that was when the gunshot cracked the air. Marissa screamed as Hale's bullet tore into her shoulder, the pistol spinning from her grasp. She crumpled to the ground, clutching her arm. Victor staggered just slightly, momentarily distracted. It was all Claire needed. She lunged, years of grief and fury coiled into one unstoppable force. The knife nicked her arm, but she didn't stop. She tore Lily free and shoved her behind her. Victor stumbled, his calm shattered for the first time, eyes wide with rage. Run, Lily, Claire screamed, and the girl ran, straight into Hale's waiting arms. Victor straightened, his knife flashing again, but Claire was already moving. She swung the stuffed rabbit like a weapon, its hidden weight striking his wrist. The blade clattered to the ground. For the first time, Victor faltered. His voice rose, wild now, the mask stripped away. You think you've won? This doesn't end. I'll always... The second gunshot ended his words. Hale stood, steady and unflinching, his pistol still smoking. Victor staggered back, eyes glassy, before collapsing across Millie's grave. His blood seeped into the earth, dark and final. The mist carried his last breath away. Marissa shrieked, scrambling toward him, but officers swarmed, wrenching her down, cuffing her hands despite her thrashing. He promised me. He promised we'd be remembered, she howled, her voice breaking into madness. Claire didn't hear her. She only heard Lily's sobs as the girl clung to her, trembling but alive. She dropped the rabbit, scooping her daughter into her arms, pressing her close as tears finally poured free. For 10 months she had lived in a nightmare. But now, in the pale light of dawn, she held her child again. Hale approached quietly, his voice low, steady. It's over. Claire shook her head, kissing Lily's hair. No, it's just beginning. We'll never forget. We'll never be the same. But we're still here, and that's enough. The cemetery was alive with motion. Officers securing the scene, Marissa's screams fading into the distance, dawn breaking through the fog. But at the center, Claire held Lily, a mother's grip stronger than grief, Stronger than evil, stronger than anything Victor could ever destroy. For the first time in months, Claire let herself believe in tomorrow,